I'm feeling a little stuck in my life and I'm wondering if teaching English as a foreign language or TEFL might be the right answer for me. If you clicked on this video, that's probably the question that you're asking yourself and looking for answers. But there's so many choices out there, so which is the right one? Which is the right country to teach in? Which is the best course to do, and why are there so many of them? And why is there such a range in price of all of the courses? It goes without saying that the answer to all of these questions depends on your specific circumstance. However, I decided to make this video to answer as many of them as possible and to give you as much valuable information as I have in here and in my experience to help you. Okay, first things first, let's start with the acronym. So TEFL, TEFL, that stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. Now, there are many courses that have TEFL in their name, but TEFL itself just is an acronym for the industry. It's just Teaching English as a Foreign Language. Now, within that industry, there are many certifications that you can do to become an English language teacher, including the International TEFL Academy, Trinity CertTESOL, and of course, probably the biggest, most famous one, and the one that I've been a trainer of for many years, and if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you will know it's the University of Cambridge ESOL CELTA course. This course is often seen as the industry standard, and as a person who has experience, and I no longer have any affiliation with Cambridge at all, so I'm free to say this, I would say that it is the leader in the TEFL industry when it comes to certification. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right course for you. CELTA itself is often one of the more expensive courses, and you might not need that level of certification if your purpose is to have 2 or 3 months away backpacking, do a little English language teaching on the side, or maybe you have no need for certification. I once had a client who reached out to me. He was giving some volunteering, teaching English lessons in his local community in Costa Rica, and he didn't need a certification. He just needed guidance for his language lessons. So it really depends on what is your reality. Okay, so we have the industry on one hand and we have courses on the other hand. The industry being TEFL and courses being like the TEFL Teaching Academy, International TEFL Academy, CELTA, Trinity CertTESOL. There are a few other names for the industry, or really what we do as teachers. So you may come across, of course, TEFL, but you'll also come across ESL, ELT, EAL, and ESOL. Now, I would say, having been a person who has worked in this industry for many years, going on 2 decades, that really the difference is splitting hairs. Here in North America, where I live at the moment, they seem to prefer the acronym ESL, and that stands for English as a Second Language. Where I am originally from, Ireland, and indeed our neighboring country, the United Kingdom, the preferred term for many years at least was ELT. Now, I'm sure there are many teachers, many professionals, trainers out there who will say, no, it's this, no, it's that. We need to think of it as EAL, English as an Additional Language. Or as Cambridge seems to prefer, ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages. Myself, personally, I just see this as academics kind of tying themselves up in knots. It's teaching English, it's learning English. Let's just keep it simple. However, for your information, just know that TEFL, ESL, ELT, EAL, it's all the same thing. Along with industry acronyms and courses, then there are also exams, but those exams are for language proficiency or your level of English. You're probably going to hear of TOEFL, IELTS, and what are known as the Cambridge suite of exams. So that would primarily be the FCE, the C1 Advanced, formerly known as the CAE, and the C2 Proficiency, formerly known as the CPE. Of course, there are many other exams out there, but these are some of the bigger ones in the industry. I was an examiner myself of the IELTS, that stands for the International English Language Testing System. Now, you don't need to have one of these exams in order to teach English. However, if English is not your first language, I've seen it as a tendency among many teachers that they like to have this additional certificate to say, hey, I'm qualified with CELTA, but I also have a CAE or a C1 Advanced or a C2 Proficiency to say that I have every bit as good a language level as your native speaking teacher. Do you absolutely need to have it? No, you don't. It's often seen as a good idea. Exams like IELTS are used for other reasons, sometimes for academic visas or general purpose visas. For example, here where I live in Canada, the government of Canada asks for the IELTS exams amongst 2 or 3 others that are acceptable for visa entry requirements. In fact, that brings back actually not so fond memories. I actually had to do the IELTS exam myself when I moved to Canada. I couldn't believe it. I had written materials for IDP and the British Council. Those are the organizations that basically create the IELTS exam. I had been an examiner for the writing and speaking exam, yet Canada still seemed to request that I do the exam. And one other point that occurs to me, I am what's known as a native speaker of English. I grew up as English being the one and only language that I heard at home and that I used at school, in my local town, for education, for work, etc. However, I didn't receive the maximum score in my IELTS exam. So I'm very open about this. I actually scored an 8.5. The maximum is a 9. So I just wonder, what does this score actually mean if me, a person who ostensibly doesn't necessarily know any other language? Now, of course, many of you who watch this channel know that I do speak French, je parle français, that I speak Spanish, hablo español, that I speak Portuguese, eu falo português, eu parlo italiano un po' tu, like I speak a little Italian. I do speak other languages, but from the purposes of IELTS, they didn't know that I speak any other language, and yet I didn't receive the maximum score. So I wonder, what is the maximum score a measure of if a person who only speaks that exam didn't receive the maximum score? Anyway, I do digress. The last acronym that I want to mention to you is CEFR. This is an acronym that you will probably come across in your career as teachers. And what it really is a language benchmarking framework. CEFR stands for the Common European Frame of Reference. However, you will find it used worldwide. Okay, so now we've got our acronyms out of the way. Let's think about locations where you might want to teach English. And again, I'm going to try and think about this in terms of 4 categories. Those are language, cost of living, culture, and food. So when it comes to language, ask yourself, are you open to learning the local language? Will it impose an inhibition on you in your life if you don't speak that language? Now, I went to Spain, France, and Brazil without speaking the language very well at all. French, I kind of spoke a little French, a little Spanish, and no Portuguese at all when I went to Brazil. However, I was very open to learning the language. In fact, I loved that challenge. I loved going to my local store to buy things and use my rudimentary Spanish. In fact, I remember I learned a lot of Portuguese by going to the corner of my street in Sao Paulo to Brazilians watching this will know what I'm talking about, a boteco. And a boteco is kind of like a little diner. And back in those days, I used to be a cigarette smoker. So I would go and I would ask for um maço de Marlboro Light e pingado, which means a pack of Marlboro Light and a little coffee with a drop of milk in it. And I would just practice that every day. And I loved it. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed it even more than my smoke. Now, thankfully, many years later, I've quit smoking, but that's besides the point. So I was very open to the language component. And so I had a really great experience. Now, I knew many people in Brazil who just stayed in English-speaking enclaves. They never really mixed with Brazilian culture at all, and Brazilian people and the Brazilian language, or Portuguese language, not the Brazilian language. And I would say that their experience, well, for some it was just fine, but for others it was difficult for them because they really were stuck in a mindset that didn't allow them to engage with the local place. Culture is another aspect that you need to consider. So do you like the music? Do you like the movies? Are you interested in the history of the country? What's been going on? What are the local issues? Is it very frustrating for you to deal with those kinds of things? Do you have a point of view where, oh, I can figure out how things would be better. It's better in my country. It's better in that country. Or do you have an openness to recognize that the culture that you're moving to it's okay that it's quite different to the country or culture that you've come from. And food is really a big one. Again, if I went to Brazil and I was trying to eat like an Irish person, now I could find potatoes there, I could find steak there, I could find carrots there. They have many of the same ingredients that I have in Ireland. However, my experience was better in Brazil because I tried to eat like Brazilians. I ate a lot more rice and beans than I ever had in my life. The same thing in Spain. I never really ate any kind of cured ham before I moved to Spain. And I was a little bit afraid about it, but I gave myself to it and fell in love with it. So I would imagine that for me, if I wasn't up for the food, if I didn't like it, if I couldn't really eat it and was trying to live this Irish life abroad, my experience would have been much more difficult for me. So if we consider these aspects to be level one, what we need to consider when we're thinking about what's the right course, what's the right decision for me in terms of what city I go to, then level two would be considering things like friends, family, and relationships. Think about important family events. How are you going to feel if you're not there? Because if you live a 2-hour flight away, a 5-hour flight away, a full day flight away, it might not be just so easy for you to get home to every family occasion and party or marriage amongst your friends or big life events like this. Let's take that a step further and imagine what would it be like for you to get married to a person from a country far, far away and to have a family in that scenario. To marry a person from a vastly different culture and language group from your own. What would that mean to you? For many people, this has worked out beautifully. For others, it has been quite a clash. Another question I like to think about when I'm considering this level two are, what are your values? 4 values I could suggest to you to consider would be money, religion, family, and politics. Now, I'm not going to get into what I think on any of those things, but for me, it's important to understand what my values are around these questions, because if I come into conflict with a significant other, a friend, or an entire society on those topics, then life is going to be so much harder for me. And then the last question I would encourage you to think about in this level 2 echelon would be, what would be the benefit or effect on people around you if you were living in another country as an English language teacher, fully immersed in this way? Would you be a person who is giving back and loving the culture and people become more and more interested in you because of how much you love it? Or would it be something else? Let's maybe go one more level with this train of thought here. I would invite you to imagine, what is the central question that you are trying to answer here when you're trying to figure out what is the right TEFL course for you. There are so many options, and you could say, well, depending on my bank account, I'm going to choose the cheapest one or the most expensive one. But really, when you start to answer the kinds of questions I've been asking you so far, you begin to realize that there's so much more to it than that. So what is the central question for you around this whole TEFL thing? And to answer that, I'd invite you to, in your mind, consider maybe 3 people who could be mentors. Now, you don't have to speak to these people. You can do this on your own. And I would invite you, in your mind, to ask the question to those 3 people who are your mentors. Now, it really could be anybody. It could be a family member, a friend, a famous person, a fictional person. Choose 3 people and ask the question to them, what's right for me? What's the right TEFL course? Is it right for me to take this next step? And then step into their shoes. What are they saying to you? What would they say to you if you were in a place where it was very conducive to have this conversation and they give you feedback? I guarantee you, if you go through this process, then you can take it one step further and zoom out and ask yourself, what do I notice these people telling, and refer to yourself maybe in the third person. What do I notice these people, my mentors, telling Fergus? People who I've coached through this process have found it extremely enlightening. Okay, let's delve into this way of thinking, and I'd like to introduce you to a person named Elodie. Elodie graduated from university just under 10 years ago, and she's been working for a communications and marketing outfit out of a small city in the state where she grew up. Many of Elodie's friends are getting married, having kids, buying houses, and for the first time in her life, she started to take a hard look at her own life. Two of Elodie's friends in particular have had a big effect on her thinking. Joanne, who has been traveling, teaching English for the past 3 years, she's been everywhere. Guatemala, Spain, and before that, she did 18 months in China. Joanne seems bubbly, happy, and to use her own words, she made a ton of cash teaching ESL in China. Now, Elodie's other friend, Charlene, is quite a different story. Charlene is a single mother. Her baby's father went overseas for work, and they've been doing a long-distance relationship for a number of years. These days, Charlene is working in an insurance company, raising her daughter mostly by herself. Back in their school days, Elodie and Charlene often talked about South Korea. They were big K-pop fans. They even made plans to visit Seoul and Busan in the South. However, life got in the way and it never quite happened. And it's this statement that's swimming around Elodie's mind these days a lot. Life got in the way and it never quite happened. And so she wonders, what am I going to do about it? Joanne seems to be the route to the K-pop life, whereas Charlene, even though her life is tough and challenging, she has her daughter and her family and her friends around her. The way that Elodie is looking at it is like this. 1, I could just do nothing and carry on as I am. That's fine. 2, I could go away and never come back. Or option 3, I could try it out on a trial period for 3 months, 6 months, or even a year. With these 3 options in mind, she reached out to me, in fact, for some coaching sessions, and we figured some things out. We talked about these 3 options and what they would allow for her. Number 1, doing nothing. This would allow her to test the waters in the safest way, but it might end up going no further. So she could do her research, she could watch YouTube videos like this, and maybe even do a little bit teaching online, but she never would have that full experience that she thinks she may have inside. Option 2, if she left with no plan to come back, this is the way for her to really make a go of things, but obviously it's the highest risk. She might have a terrible experience or she might have a wonderful experience. And option 3, she might get very methodical about her plan. First of all, she might choose a country. Then she's going to select a duration, get the cheapest or best certificate, or find a happy medium between the two, and then find employment in South Korea. If she likes it, she might upgrade her certificate from there. In Elodie's scenario, asking ourselves the kinds of coaching questions that I've asked you to consider, and especially the questions around what would her 3 mentors say to her, really provided so much illumination on the topic for her. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think is the best route forward for Elodie? What would you do in her scenario, and what are you considering when it comes to choosing the right TEFL course, the right place to live with that certification? And remember, if coaching seems like it might be the right option for you, I am indeed a certified coach as well as a CELTA trainer, and I run an integrated skills website with plenty of help, including a members community where you can connect with others from all around the world who are in exactly the same position as you. You'll find a link in the description below and check it out. I really recommend it. Last but not least, if you have found some value in this video, I would be ever so grateful if you would give us a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. All that's left for me to say is bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.